Can you imagine living in a real-life Terminator or Matrix world with robots fighting wars alongside or against humans? Well, we're not quite there yet, but it may not be as fanciful as it seems. I'm here to talk to you about the ethics of the use of robotics in military applications, what they're currently used for in today's warfighting efforts, and how we effectively regulate the use of robotic systems in warfare. I've spent the last 8 years in the military and as a government contractor working on submarines and unmanned systems. The autonomous vehicles that I have experience with are primarily used in maritime intelligence gathering applications, but there are certainly creative ways to employ offensive payloads from these vehicles. So, is this where we're headed? Though we may not be fighting full-scale wars with giant mech suits or flying robots battling out in the skies, we still need to confront the morality of autonomous systems that employ weapons and what we can do to make sure that wartime casualties are consistent with the DoD Law of War, which is a source document that defines the law of war as that part of international law that regulates the resort to armed force, the conduct of hostilities, and the protection of war victims in both international and non-international armed conflict, belligerent occupation, and the relationships between belligerent, neutral, and non-belligerent states. So, is it ethical? Though autonomous vehicles and drones act independently, they still have limitations imposed by developers to prevent equipment and personnel hazards. At the current state of technology in AI and autonomy, there is still human intervention required for many of the tasks to be carried out. UAVs are remotely operated by people, so ultimately people are the ones making the call whether to use lethal force. So the answer is we already do. This is the USV Sea Hunter used by the US Navy, and this is the UUV, or Unmanned Undersea Vehicle, Mark 18. So current uses by the military applications include the use of autonomous vehicles or drones that are largely intelligence driven. This basically means that they'll be using intelligence gathering and passing on information, which is not only more financially responsible, but can also keep people out of harm's way while trying to gather information in traditionally risky ways. Unmanned submersibles can get close to targets at the bottom of the ocean without risking damaging a multi-billion-dollar submarine. UAVs can fly stealth or even strike missions without risking a pilot being shot down in unfriendly territory. According to NASDAQ, global spending on robotics in the defense industry has skyrocketed over the last 20 years. In 2000, the defense industry was only spending $2.4 billion versus a projected $11.2 billion worldwide in 2020. The United States alone has gone from spending $17 billion in 2017 on applied research and development to over $20 billion by the budget approved by Congress in 2020. The demand for robots is only going to increase as the benefits of autonomy become apparent to military minds. Here are some of the UAVs that the US military currently employs. The UGVs, or unmanned ground vehicles. USVs and UUVs, or unmanned surface vessels, or unmanned underwater vehicles. So how do we make this work? In order to get ahead of the curve as it pertains to the ethical employment of futuristic robot technology, we have to make a plan that balances the need for self-defense as a nation and holding ourselves accountable for any fallout of using robots where humans once carried out tasks. We need to create legislation that governs the proper use of robotics in war scenarios, keep the human loss of life at the forefront of the decision-making process, and implement checks and balances that require specific criteria be met before any lethal action occurs. We need to educate the public on realistic expectations on using robots as weapons or as weapon delivery systems. Engineers can make ways to minimize casualties to civilians and manage expectations such that people do not have unrealistic views on the capabilities and flaws of robots. Schultz said in 2011, "The humans who employ autonomous weapons can ensure that robots use proportional force not only by programming them to act with restraint, but also by ensuring that robots are not equipped with weapons that may lead to disproportionate attacks." Today I talked to you about the ethical use of robots in warfare, the current ways we employ modern robots in the defense industry, and ways to prevent unethical and immoral use of robotics in war. Plato said, "Only the dead have seen the end of war," but that does not mean we cannot take every measure to prevent it. And if that fails, we can conduct ourselves with morality and treat human life with the dignity it deserves. The future certainly holds tragedy and beauty, but we should make every effort to sustain the ethical high ground during wartime. Thank you.